Why is BLM involved and speaking up on this topic when it really doesn't seem to have a whole lot to do with them?
It is in her best interest to step down.
Ms. McBride is indeed an African-American woman. And the person that she's also involved in the investigation with, her mother, is also African-American. The problem we're seeing here is that BLM does not seem to support these particular African-Americans, regardless of the situation. What is actually happening is that Ms. McBride did not have the kind of clout that Ms. Redding wanted her to have for the community that she considered important. Politics is a messy business, and some people find out really quickly how messy it can be. One individual is in the throes of that messiness right now in South Bend, Indiana. A woman by the name of Sharon McBride is under investigation and has been relieved of her duties in the position that she's been in due to some misunderstandings, or at least right now, investigation into some handling of funds that she was involved in. But that's the side story to what we're actually going to be talking about. We'll call that the bedrock principle of this discussion. The bigger issue here is that there are certain individuals, certain organizations that have come forward that, let's just say for lack of a better term, do not have her back. That organization being the local chapter of BLM.
We think that it is in her best interest to step down.
Wednesday, the St. Joseph County Commissioners launched an investigation into the Ducombe Center due to Sharon McBride's involvement as a director at the facility. McBride's mother, Dolores Walker, works as a kitchen director and made six figures, earning more than $45,000 in overtime pay. Now, Black Lives Matter South Bend is calling for her temporary removal from the Common Council until the investigation is complete.
At this point, we do know that there are just allegations at this time, but if that is the case, then we don't trust these politicians that are in these positions and they're abusing their power.
Now, we're not going to get into the legalities of whether or not what Ms. McBride did was right, wrong. That is not this discussion. Our discussion is why is BLM involved and speaking up on this topic when it really doesn't seem to have a whole lot to do with them. Now, the discussion that we're going to have is primarily based on two things. Does Black Lives Matter have a stake in what's going on in the investigation? Or two, are they doing this for the reasons that their name implies? Because Ms. McBride is indeed an African-American woman. And the person that she's also involved in the investigation with, her mother, is also African-American. The problem we're seeing here is that BLM does not seem to support these particular African-Americans, regardless of the situation. Now, we can go many different directions as to whether or not they should be supporting, have to support, should not support. Again, that is not the question in terms of legality. We have questions about the why BLM is talking up and why they take the side they do. Now, when we looked at who was put in place as a relief pitcher, if you want to call it that, for Ms. McBride, the individual that they placed there is not of African-American descent. In fact, it is a Caucasian. When we looked into certain things, here's what we found. Now, we're going to go into a little bit of history of BLM. If you don't mind, just bear with me a little bit. The organization of BLM has its origins not in actual black people starting it. It began at the behest of the same people that BLM espouses they don't like. We found that kind of odd, but when we looked at this particular case, it seemed to make sense. They seem to be going to bat for the exact people that they say caused the most trouble. Again, we are not saying one way or another. We're just talking about their involvement. Everyone who watches Too Strong should know by now our stance on this race relation issue. And if you don't know by now, we have a lot of videos you can go catch up on, and it'll give you a very plain and equal understanding of our standings. Okay, so when we looked at this, we saw two things. There was a case before in 2021 of an individual who was terminated because they had done something completely and actually against the rules of the place that they worked. But for some reason, the BLM chapter was gung-ho about supporting him and defaming the people that released him. From his work, I mean. Now, when we looked at it, there was some backdoor dealings that it seemed to be involved in. Now, this is just on the surface, based on the report, not based on anything we perceive in our mind. This is all tangible stuff you can go look up yourself. The person that was let go seemed to have an investment in what exactly BLM was promoting, meaning they were looking at giving preference to a certain group of people so that they can get a certain project done to a certain amount of money. They got upset that this person was released because he was the head that was actually going to give them what they wanted. It doesn't seem that Miss McBride was doing the exact same thing. There was almost like a disconnect between the two. Could it be that the reason that BLM is supporting the termination of this individual is because there was no quid pro quo, if you want, for a lack of a better term? That's the only thing we can think of right now. Again, this is not about whether what Miss McBride did, and that's under investigation, was right, wrong, true, or false. Our questioning is BLM's support of the decision to terminate Miss McBride. When we looked at it, Miss Kat Redding is the one that's ahead of the BLM chapter there in South Bend. She was also very good close friends with the person that we talked about before that was terminated in 2021. Is there a correlation between the two? Could it be that what is actually happening is that Miss McBride did not have the kind of clout that Miss Redding wanted her to have for the community that she considered important? And in so doing, she needed to put somebody else in this place, or at least support another candidate that would give her what she was looking for the chapter of BLM there in South Bend. There are so many things unanswered here because it's a lot of secrets, quiet, I ain't saying nothing, you don't talk to me, I'm not talking to you. What we also found weird was that while the investigation was still going on, the decision to terminate was made. Even Miss Redding was on camera saying, even though it's not done yet, I know the investigation hasn't yielded an answer as to whether or not any wrongdoing was done, but we just feel it's in the best interest for her to step down. No other reason, it's just in the best interest.
We think that it is in her best interest to step down.
Normally, if you have a reason for saying that, you would, I don't know, say it. Tell us what exactly you think that should be the reasons for her to step down. Either you believe what she did was wrong, and that's what you can say, or you have no dog in the fight, then why are you fighting for the dog? We don't understand. So maybe Miss Redding can shed some light on this. Is there something else going on that you don't want somebody else knowing because you don't seem very forthcoming about the information you have, or the reasons why you support the termination? We have reached out to all parties involved, and we are waiting to hear back from quite a few of them. We don't know whether or not they'll talk, but I think this story needs us to pay attention to it for one very specific reason. If the reasons for BLM existing is more of what you can give them as opposed to what they support for the freedom of who they say they support, Black people, and that's a problem, which means they can be bought. And if they can be bought, can they really support freedom fights for African Americans? Because the next person to come along and offer them funds, they'll fight for that person, not for the people that really need it. This is why we're bringing attention to it, because it seems as though it's a riding trend for BLM to do this. If you have influence for me to get, I will back you. If there is something about you that can bring spotlight to me, I will help you. However, if you're not doing anything for me, then I'm going to make sure to do everything in my power to not back you and not have your back, even though my mantra is help African Americans. When we find out more, trust and believe me, we'll bring it to the forefront. The investigation is still ongoing. Nothing has been found yet or substantiated. And when it is, trust and believe that Too Strong will be there to bring you that information. But Miss Redding, if you are going to watch this and you do see this, we would love to have a conversation about the reasonings you are possessing as to why you do not have the back of Miss McBride. And they could be completely legit reasons. We just would like to have a little bit of a breakdown, if you will, of the why. We look forward to hearing from you, and we will bring you the latest as soon as we get it.